J.D Vance walked up to the entrance of the most exclusive gala of the year, but before he could take another step, a security guard planted himself in his path. The grand ballroom shimmered with the soft glow of golden chandeliers, each one sparkling like 1,000 tiny stars. The music swirled in the air, gentle but powerful, as if the sound itself was dancing with the guests. People in glittering gowns and sharp suits moved gracefully, laughing and chatting, their voices blending into a soft hum that filled the room. It was the kind of night that felt magical, where the world seemed to stop, just for a moment, to admire the beauty of the moment. This wasn't just any party, this was the Gala, the most exclusive event of the year where the wealthiest people from all over the world gathered, the richest of the rich, the most famous celebrities, all mingling together under one grand roof. At the entrance, a long line of perfectly dressed guests waited to step onto the red carpet, each one eager to get a glimpse of the glitz and glamour. Security was tight, just like always. This was no ordinary gathering, after all. There were too many important people, too much money at stake. And then, there was J.D Vance. He wasn't like the others. Vance wasn't dressed like the others. While everyone around him wore expensive suits, beautiful gowns, and shiny shoes, he had on a simple black denim, a black polo shirt, and a face cap. He looked ordinary, not at all like the glamorous guests around him. But Vance didn't mind. He didn't need to look like everyone else. With confidence, he walked up to the entrance of the VIP section, a special part of the gala reserved for the most important guests. He was excited and ready to join the fun. But as he got closer to the door, a tall, burly security guard stepped in his way. "Hey, you can't go in there!" the security guard said, his voice firm and his arms crossed over his chest. Vance blinked in surprise. He wasn't expecting this. "I was invited," he said calmly, trying to explain. The guard didn't believe him. He gave Vance a long, hard look, his eyes full of doubt. "Invited?" The guard scoffed and let out a laugh. "Yeah, right. You don't look like you belong here," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He crossed his arms again and shook his head. "Everyone wants to belong now, even commoners like you." Vance's heart sank. The words stung, but he tried to stay calm. "I'm telling you, I'm invited. Check the list," he said, standing tall. But the guard just laughed again, shaking his head. "You think I have time for that? Go on. Move along," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. Vance couldn't believe what was happening. He had every right to be here, but the guard wasn't listening. "Look," Vance said, his voice now a little more forceful. "I'm not some random person off the street. I've got the invitation to prove it." He pulled out his phone, trying to show the guard the email with his name on it. But the security guard wasn't interested. "Nice try," he said, rolling his eyes. "I'm not stupid. Just go away. You're not coming in." The words felt like a slap to Vance's face. His hands clenched into fists. He wasn't used to being treated like this. "Why are you acting like this?" Vance asked, his voice rising. "I was invited. I have the right to be here." But the guard only smirked. "I don't care what you say. You're not on my list," he said, pushing Vance lightly on the shoulder to get him to move. Vance stepped back, feeling the heat rise in his chest. The situation was getting worse. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was turning into something much bigger. "I'm not going anywhere," Vance said. Vance said, "I've had enough of this." The crowd around them began to notice the argument. Some guests whispered to each other, others stopped and watched the drama unfold. The air was thick with tension. It felt like time had slowed down as the two of them stared at each other, Vance with fire in his eyes and the security guard with a smug look on his face. "Move along!" the guard snapped, taking a step forward and pushing Vance harder this time. "Get out of here! You're not wanted!" Vance stumbled back, feeling the anger rise inside him. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he muttered under his breath. But the guard just shoved him again, this time so hard that Vance nearly lost his balance. The situation was spiraling out of control. The more Vance resisted, the more the security guard pushed him, growing angrier with every word. "Leave, or I'll make you leave!" the guard shouted, his face red with frustration. Vance's mind raced. This wasn't how he imagined his night. He never thought he would be kicked out of a party he was invited to. He didn't want to make a scene, but the more the guard pushed him, the more he felt like he had to stand up for himself. Suddenly, as the security guard shoved Vance, a few celebrities walked by on their way into the VIP hall. Their footsteps stopped when they saw the scene unfolding. They froze, their eyes widening in recognition. It was clear they knew who Vance was. One of the celebrities, a tall man wearing a sharp suit and dark sunglasses, pointed at Vance in surprise. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice low but unmistakable. "Isn't that Vance?" The others turned to look, their mouths falling open. "That's him! Vance! The one everyone's talking about!" another celebrity said, shaking his head in disbelief. The guard, still trying to keep control of the situation, looked around in confusion. "The Vance?" he repeated, his voice full of uncertainty, his brow furrowed. "Yes, the Vance," the celebrity confirmed, walking over to the security guard. He stood tall, facing the guard with a stern look on his face. "You better let him in now or there will be trouble." His voice was firm, but there was a trace of anger in it. The security guard stood still, stunned. The celebrity gave him one last, sharp look before turning to walk into the VIP hall, his friends following closely behind. The security guard stood there, still frozen, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't know," he stammered, his words lost in the rush of the moment. But before the security guard could say another word, Vance did something unexpected. He turned on his heels quickly, his face full of frustration, and began walking away from the VIP section. The crowd parted as Vance moved, his shoulders tense, his head down. The celebrity had just helped him, but now Vance was leaving. The excitement that had filled the air moments ago was now replaced by a sudden, uneasy silence. The security guard's eyes followed him, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to do. Vance didn't look back. He didn't care about the strange mix of sympathy and confusion that was floating in the air behind him. His feet carried him faster and faster as he walked away, step by step, away from the VIP section, away from the drama, away from the confusion. But the security guard knew he had made a huge mistake. He could feel the weight of the crowd's eyes on him, their judgment heavy. His mind raced. The Vance. He was a somebody, and he had just been treated like nobody. The security guard's face turned red with embarrassment, his stomach twisted. What if Vance left? What if he told everyone what had just happened? My career could be over. My reputation would be ruined. The crowd was watching, and they weren't going to forget this moment. Just as the guard stood there, still unsure of what to do, something suddenly clicked in his mind. A thought hit him like a bolt of lightning. I should apologize. I need to fix this. Right now. He didn't hesitate. Without thinking about it, he turned and sprinted after Vance, his feet pounding on the floor, his breath heavy in his chest. "Wait!" the guard shouted, his voice cutting through the silence. Vance didn't stop walking. He could hear the guard behind him, but he didn't want to turn around. He didn't want to face him. The pain from being treated so badly still stung in his chest, and his feet kept moving faster, as if they were carrying him away from the hurt. As Vance walked, his feet steady but his heart still racing, something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, the security guard suddenly dropped to the ground, his knees hitting the pavement with a loud thud. Vance stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide. The guard was kneeling in front of him, his head bowed low, hands trembling as he spoke. "Please, Mr. Vance," the guard said, his voice shaky and full of regret. "I'm so sorry for what I did. I didn't know who you were, and I treated you badly. Please forgive me." The entire crowd went silent. The air was thick with tension as everyone watched. People in expensive suits, shiny dresses, and even the cameras of the media pointed right at them. It was a scene that no one could have predicted. The security guard, a person meant to stop others from entering, was now on his knees, begging for forgiveness from the very person he had humiliated. Vance stood still, looking down at the guard. For a moment, it seemed like time itself had stopped. The only sound was the soft rustling of clothes in the wind and the distant hum of the Gala. The crowd was holding its breath, waiting to see what Vance would do next. Vance took a deep breath. His heart was still heavy with everything that had happened, but he wasn't a person to hold on to anger forever. Slowly, he stepped forward, and with a firm voice, he said, "Stand up, now." The security guard hesitated, but Vance's voice was clear, and he knew what he had to do. He rose slowly, his head still down in shame, his hands still shaking slightly. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for the next move. Vance looked the guard in the eyes and said, "I forgive you. But remember, it's not about the clothes we wear or how we look on the outside. You can't judge people just because of their appearance." His voice was calm, but there was strength in it, and the crowd felt every word. As Vance spoke, the media's cameras clicked away, capturing the moment, and the crowd, those who had been gossiping and whispering earlier, stood in stunned silence. They were listening now. Everyone was focused on Vance's words, hanging on every sentence as if they were a lesson to be learned. "You see," Vance continued, his voice growing softer but more powerful with each word, "not everyone wants to dress flashy. Some of us prefer to be simple sometimes. You can't judge a person just by what they wear. It doesn't matter if we wear jeans or tuxedos, polos or dresses. What matters is who we are on the inside." The crowd was completely still, every eye on Vance, every ear tuned in. Even the media, who usually focused on the flashy moments of the gala, paused their cameras for a moment to capture the weight of his words. The silence in the air was like a deep breath everyone had taken together. "You don't know what someone has been through," Vance said, his voice quieter now, but it still carried. "You don't know their story, their struggles. So don't ever look down on someone just because they don't look like what you think they should." As Vance spoke, the crowd felt something shift. The air was no longer heavy with tension, but filled with the energy of something important. His words weren't just about forgiveness. They were a reminder to the world that it's not the outside that matters. It's the heart that counts. And then, after what felt like a long moment, the crowd did something that made the air sparkle with excitement. They applauded, slowly at first, but then louder and louder, until the sound of their applause filled the entire space. The media cameras clicked, trying to capture every moment of this emotional shift. The applause didn't just come from the crowd, it came from a place of respect, from understanding the power of what Vance had just said. They were applauding not just because Vance had forgiven the guard, but because he had used his moment to teach everyone a valuable lesson. It was a moment of humility, a moment of teaching, and a moment of change. The security guard, who had been so ashamed moments earlier, stood taller now. His face, once red with embarrassment, was now filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Vance," he said quietly, his voice full of respect. "I promise I'll never forget this lesson." Vance nodded, offering a small smile. "Make sure you don't," he said with a gentle tone, "because it's important to treat everyone with kindness. No matter how they dress or where they come from, we're all the same." The crowd continued to cheer, their voices rising in approval. The tension had finally broken, and it felt like the night had transformed into something more meaningful than anyone had expected. Vance had made his point. He had used his frustration to create change, to teach everyone around him that respect doesn't come from appearances, it comes from how we treat one another. As the applause finally died down, Vance turned and nodded to the security guard. "Let's go back inside," he said, his voice calm but full of strength. The security guard smiled gratefully, his eyes full of respect. They walked side by side back toward the VIP hall, the crowd parting for them as they moved through. The cameras continued to click, but now it wasn't just the drama of the situation being captured. It was the message, the heart of what had just happened. When Vance entered the VIP hall, the people inside looked up and they saw him not just as a guest or someone important, they saw him as someone who had made a difference. The quiet whispers from earlier had turned into words of admiration, and just like that, the night shifted. What had started as a moment of humiliation had transformed into a moment of respect, understanding, and change. It was the kind of night no one would ever forget. It wasn't about the clothes we wear or the flashy moments we crave. It was about kindness, about treating others with respect, and about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. And with that, the gala continued. But for everyone there, it would be a night they would always remember. Not for the glamour, but for the lesson that Vance had shared.